Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Michael McCarville. This is Fun with Fallen Flags, episode 79. We're working in the OPHIR loop still, and we're going to work on Mrs. Skillen's store. So this is a Banta Modelworks kit, number BMW 108. This is a HO scale kit. And if you look at this picture that we've seen before, the Oilton Club Saloon is the one that's cut off on the right. The next one to the left is the general store, the general merchandise quality store that we built after that one. And then, so the next structure, it's got a brown garage and a white and black, it's actually green, face on it with a stairway coming down. That's the kit we're going to build in this episode. So I want to thank Bill Banta for allowing me to feature the kit that we're going to build, and I want to thank the friends of Cumbres and Toltec for using the photos. However, this photo is a Library of Congress photo, and if you just do a search for the OPHIR area, you'll be able to find it. I love this photo. It's one of my favorite photos, and partly because it's got the guy up on the railing kind of looking down at the photographer, the old car, the crossbucks right in front of the railroad. So this is actually right across from the depot. So, and we're going to build that too. And I like this because it's up on timbers, it's got the stairs, and it's got retaining walls. There's some old structures behind it, so a lot of character. I don't know, this is one of my favorite photos. So there's lots of photos, and I had to do a lot of research on to match the exact color of green. A lot of black and white photos, not much color. So in the 50s, we started seeing some of the color photos show up in the Friends of Cumbres and Toltec website, and I was able to match greens off of that. I just don't know how back in time the greens go. So anyway, we're using green on this one, and plus it'll give a little bit of visual contrast too. So let's go ahead and jump in and look at the parts. Okay, so the parts diagram, instructions and photos and step by step, all that paperwork, upper left, a couple of castings, a chimney and a smoke jack, and then there's some corrugated metal material. The bottom two big pieces, those mesh together. We're going to glue those end to end, and then that's actually the deck that this whole thing sits on. Then there is the middle, there's the stairway plus a jig for putting the stairs together, all the door and window pieces and a few trim pieces down the center. And then on the right, the top section, that's for the garage, those are the walls. And the main structure is next. I kind of already broke those pieces out and laid them out how they're going to go together. And then on the bottom, that cardboard is the roofing material, the acetate windows, and then the dimensional material for wood and trim pieces and stairway railings and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and jump in and we'll start talking about the actual structure. Okay, so this is the bottom side of the two pieces of material that forms the deck that this whole thing sits on. So pretty simple. Glue those together, keep the glue off the top side. All I did was an India ink wash on this, and if you're looking for any of the details or what kind of paint and what kind of treatments that some of the materials got, all that stuff's in the notes. Look underneath there. There's also information down there for all the vendors that we talk about. And then any of my website and Patreon and Facebook and YouTube and everything else. All that stuff's down there, so if you have any questions, go take a look at that. Alright, so a few of the pieces needed a little bit of bracing, mostly because of age, because of the material. The wood started to warp a little bit. So on the back side of the walls, in certain places, especially the garage, a little bit of the glue with some basswood pieces, clamp those in place. I love using binder clips. I have tons of them. So my office is going to throw them away, and I said I'll use them. So that's what we're doing here. Those are clamped on the back side. Now if you want to detail the interior, you might have to get creative on how exactly you're going to uncurl the pieces, but since I'm not detailing the interior, that's going to be really easy for me. While embracing the back side of some of the structure, this is the walls in the garage, the brown building to the right, and both the buildings sit on that platform. And you can see these walls are actually a lot more curled than the main structure, so they got a lot more wood. And you can see as I'm gluing some of these together, I've used tons of clamps just to make sure everything is nice and flat. This works out really well, but if you have a newer kit, you may not even have to deal with this step at all. But getting all the pieces glued together and then reinforcing the corners with a little bit of extra glue, that's a good step, and you won't have to worry about any issues in the future. Jumping ahead a little bit, the walls are all basically glued together, and any place that those tabs get glued, any place that you see those end tabs coming through the wall or on the corners, trim pieces are going to cover those. So really all we have to do is just paint the structure white, and then we'll worry about the green trim pieces covering all that later. There's a few places where the tabs were recessed a little bit, and you got to test fit a lot of this stuff and make sure that if you may need to do a little bit of carving or getting some sanding or filing some stuff down so that the tabs fit really well. But there's a few places where the tabs wouldn't come all the way through, and instead of working on the back side, I just glued them in place and then just put a little putty on the that recess, because the wood isn't going to get stained, it's all going to get painted white. So there's a few places I use the white Tamiya putty just to fill in those gaps. I'd say 90% of the walls actually got covered by green trim pieces, so you didn't even have to worry about it. Next up is painting that sheet of material, painting that stuff green. There's one or two pieces that you have to take off that because we're actually going to paint those white, but everything else is a green if you're going to model this as the prototypical structure, which is what I was after. So you can see the green really well in this picture. We'll get a close up here in a little bit. But that's what the front looks like. You build up some of these doors and windows in layers, and the acetate goes on the back side. But I reinforced a lot of the backs with a little bit of Titebond glue. I didn't really use super glue on this except for the railing and the stairs. Other than that, it was all wood glue that held this stuff in place. The bay window is actually a lot of different pieces. This is one of the few places that I used a clear rubber type canopy glue. They use it on a lot of aircraft models, gluing the canopy in place because it's clear and it doesn't even look like you've actually used any kind of adhesive on it, because if any of it shows, you can see through it, unless it's really thick on there. So this is the bay window. So I'm actually using the scribed lines on the decking so you can see the side walls, the angle that they're supposed to sit at. So the left wall, that's actually 3 pieces. The center wall, that's 3 pieces. The right wall, that's 3 pieces. So you got 9 pieces there, plus acetate, 3 more pieces, there's 12, plus the roof, there's 13. And then I added some trim on top of the roof, which generally the roof should match the color of the bay window roof should match the color of the structure roof. However, I decided to make it just a little different, just for variety's sake. So my roof looked like that when I was done. Put a few more tabs on the top, and then the opening, when I built this per the scribed lines, the opening was actually a little too wide, so it might have had to do with the angle that I chose to put the walls. But essentially what I did is I just added 2 pieces of basswood that you can see on the left side of the opening and right side of the opening, painted the same color white, and then I just glued that bay window directly to those pieces of wood, and you really didn't even see those pieces of wood, just a little edge on the sides, but it gave something for that bay window to glue into. Okay, so let's talk about the garage for a little bit. You can see that there's a lot of wood on the inside of this that I had to use to straighten the pieces out. Once I did, it was great, but there was a lot of reinforcing. And there's a few places where I got 2 of the reinforcing pieces a little too close, so I had to do a little bit of trimming. But anyway, don't be afraid to throw a lot of glue and basswood on if there's a piece that's curled. You're never going to see it. If you're going to try to detail interior some of these buildings, that might be a concern, but otherwise I got everything very straight, and by the time I got it glued and nice and square on the framing square that I use on my desk, it looked fine. Again, any of the tabs that overlap, we're going to cover those with trim pieces. So you can see there's little marks at the very top of the wall on that photo that's where the rafter ends are supposed to stick out from the building. Well, to get all those parallel is really going to be a chore. So I came up with an alternate method. And what I did was, let me bring it up. I cut notches in the top of the walls, the front wall, the offset wall, and then the back straight wall. And I put rafters in there. And the only reason why I did that, because you're not going to see the rafters on the inside of it. It's going to be covered by a roof. But I want to make sure that they were nice and straight and parallel when it was done. I just cut them out with a razor blade. I cleaned up the notches so they were all uniform. And then it's very slow, very tedious. But when you're done, you can take some of the trim material, throw it in there, and then glue it on the backside, because we still haven't done the exterior of this. We haven't painted or stained anything. So the rafter ends will stick out and they'll be nice and parallel. However, we're going to go ahead and take that as rafter material in the center out when we're done, because we still want to glue the structure down, and I wanted to do it from the inside. So we're going to reclaim some of those. The whole purpose of doing this is just to make sure they're nice and straight. A lot of work, but it looks nice when it's done. Next up, we are working on the color of the outside of this structure. Now, I initially gave it a India ink wash, and then I stained it with a wood stain. I really didn't like the way it came out, so then I decided to do something else, and I painted this a really kind of a medium to dark brown, kind of a satin effect. And the actual structure is very dark when you look at it, but there's no color pictures of it. You can just see that it's dark, like it was painted or really, really dark stained. Anyway, I made it look like this, and I also wanted to do something so it didn't look so, just brown. So I took the green from the main structure and I painted all the trim work and the little door pieces. I painted that same green just to make it a little more uniform. And what we came up with was this color. So what you're looking at is the rafters have now been cut out from the center. So I reclaimed all that wood, but I did it carefully so that none of the rafter ends got bent. This also has a couple layers of chalk powder slowly built up with Dullcoat sprayed in between. And you can see there's a little bit of grime on the green to tone down that a little bit, and then a little bit of black streaks on the front and on the side, but they're really subtle. You kind of have to look for them just to make it look like it's more like a garage and not the main structure, which was essentially a saloon, liquor store. It had a couple different things. It was actually a hotel or a lodging place towards the end. So at this point, we need to start doing the roof. The corrugated metal is essentially, it's a lot like a thick aluminum foil, and that's the bare metal. And then the next piece down, that's actually been spray painted with a gray primer. And on top of that is a Vallejo rust color. And on top of that, we're going to go ahead and weather it with the same type of thing that we did on the side of the garage. The only thing I would probably do in the different, one of the viewers, there's 6 videos of every single step as I was building it. There's 6 of those videos. If you're really interested, you can go through those. But there's a self-etching primer that person suggested. I haven't used it. I didn't use it on this. I think it probably would have been a good play to do that, just because this stuff was very touchy. Even using a toothpick, I can accidentally scrape some of the material off because it didn't really stick very well, even though it was primered, even though it was paint on top of the primer. So it's very touchy, and I had to touch up the roof a few times. But when it was done, painted and then weathered, it looked very good. So I would definitely use all the process again, but probably a different primer treatment would be a good idea. And after you get the wood treated, you can see that I have added a little bit more dust. Now when you spray Dullcoat on it, it takes a lot of the edge off of everything. White and light gray virtually disappear. Black sometimes comes up a little bit. It gets a little more pronounced, and rust really gets muted a lot. So depending on the color, it may just, like if it's white or light gray, it may actually just make it more of a dull shine, or like a better, more effective dull coat. But black will definitely stick around, and then some of the dark browns and the rust colors, those will get built up over time as you do different layers. So we're doing the exact same process that we just did for the garage on top of the main structure itself. Now, just pieces of cardboard. Where the top of the roof meets, that's fine. Those two pieces of cardboard, it's actually a single piece and it's folded, so you have a nice solid edge there. It goes down and it meets those side walls. I actually put a little bit of a strip of wood so that I could get a good glue joint on the top piece, and then those two side pieces. Those actually meet on top of a piece of basswood that has been added to make that interior wall a little bit thicker, so I get a good glue joint. And then I just painted the cardboard on the underside, the soffit, and then on the top, any place where the roofing material might actually not cover all the way to the end, all of that got painted the trim color. And then there is trim pieces that go around the roof as well. All that gets painted that same trim color as well. Let's take a look at that trim color actually while we're talking about it. This is a green that is very, very close to the green that is on the structure itself. And this is actually a green that's not sold anymore. It's an old polyester color, water-soluble color. So I can't really give you a number on it because you're not going to find it. But if you're looking to match something, this is a pretty good picture to go off of. If you decide you want to do your own color scheme, then you can ignore this completely. So, but anyway, that was kind of what I went after. The bay window is the same color. The trim in the garage is the same color. Then there's the side porch. There's a little side piece, and then there's square holes already in that base deck for these 4 posts, and then all the way around the front. And all I really did was just put these posts in place and glue the roof in, and then I pulled the posts back down through the holes, stained them, and then just slid them back up. Flipping the whole thing over, spot each of the holes on the bottom of the posts with thick super glue, and that keeps them in place. And once they dried, they really didn't move around very much. I mean, I could move them with my finger, but they would just come right back to where they were glued into. And so I'd never even glued them actually to the bottom side of the roof piece. It's glued to the building. The posts are glued on the bottom. If you want to, you could glue that. I didn't really feel like it was a necessary step, so I just left it like that. So the roof and the structure are all glued down, and we end up with something that looks like this. So you can see the roof. The garage looks a little more weathered and a little less taken care of than the main structure. And what we have left is we have the railing on the front, and you can see the holes are already in there. And the wood that is, I think they're 4x4s that are supposed to go in there, and they're really snug. So by the time you get done pushing them down, just line them up. They stay in place. Flip it over and just hit each one of the bottoms with super glue. Let that dry, and then you can start doing the railing pieces. So the railing pieces look like this, and all I really did on this was I just clamped one of the railing boards in the place where I wanted it, and hit it with super glue on the back, so you don't even see any glue joints, and then the super glue just kind of absorbs into the wood anyway. But you can see there's a top rail, which is about I believe it's about a 4x8 piece of material that comes with the kit, and then the thinner pieces are those just more decorative pieces that are on the front. So that's what the front looks like, and then the stairs is the other piece. Now the stairs is probably the most time-consuming piece that I did. They give you a template, and the stair stringers, the pieces that go vertical, those are when they sit in the template in the jig, they sit closer and the treads that have adhesive on the back are actually sit on top of it. Now on the actual structure, there is no overhang of the treads. So what I did was I actually took it out of the jig, and it was actually a lot of really tentative holding, and I glued the tread at the very edge. So this was easily the most time-consuming part, just because of the way I handled it, and I didn't use the jig. But I just took my time, one piece at a time, one board at a time. Somebody was actually watching me do this, and they're like, this is going to take you forever to finish it. And they're right, it did take forever to finish it. Especially because where I could line up the steps, that was one thing. But then when I had to do the vertical, the railing supports, that was all eyeballing it completely. So a lot of very slow measuring and making sure test fitting and all that. But when I was done, this actually looks like what the real stairs look like. Very time consuming, but after this got done, let's go ahead and take a look at the final completed building and stairs. Okay, so at this point the structure is completed, weathered, windows are in, and the stairway is done. I am looking forward to putting this on the layout, so we've got some work to do on a couple other buildings, but please follow along, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get to see this thing mounted. And there's another view. You can kind of see the weathering on that one. A little bit better view of the stairs and that angle. Look at it from the other side. And I have one more picture, and that was probably my favorite. But again, feel free to subscribe to me on the YouTube channel, the Facebook group, OPHIR Scale Tutorials. All that information is going to be down below. And I look forward to the next build. And thank you for watching, and I will see you online. Take care, everybody.